it's a pleasure to be here, actually. It's funny. First of all, I should just say you're lucky to have Robbie Savage. She has been a great resource on working on water issues and water quality in Washington, D.C. And for as long as I've been there, Robbie had been around making things happen, and learned a lot from her and done a lot of really useful, fun, creative things. And I think you're just lucky to have her here, and it's a great resource. So keep up the good work. So Clean Water Act at 40 years. It's it's funny. Underlying just about everything we do when we talk about it. I'm getting philosophical, right? Human beings, we tend to do everything in a story, right? We organize our lives and our problems and our world. Underlying it all, there's almost always a narrative. And almost always in that narrative, there tends to be a good guy and a bad guy. And in that narrative, it just happens to turn out, but more often than not, we're the good guy, and the other person's the bad guy, right? So I'm here on behalf of agriculture in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So I like, so I'm definitely in agriculture's corner. Just to let you know, I mean, I love working with farmers. I love seeing them get stuff done. They do really important work. But my job is to help them do better on water quality and do as much as they can. But I'm coming at it from their perspective. But I really would like, I like those opportunities where we can break out of the narrative and look at the substance of the issue, because everyone's thinking they're coming at it as from the good guy position. And there's always a little bit of truth to that, sometimes a lot. And there's also some bad guy stuff going on both sides. So it helps to have an open mind about that as we deal with these problems. One thing I think about a lot in this day and age when we talk about the land and water interface and the big challenge, and it's been a challenge. I came to Washington, D.C. in 1987 just as the non-point source Section 319 provisions were being enacted. And so it's been there for my entire career in Washington. And I think it's probably fair to say at that point in time, but I heard this used a couple years ago by some Clean Water Act professionals. In '72, those first 15 years, and even since, in many ways, dealing with our clean water problems was analogous to dealing with one of the first car I had was like a 1969 Chevrolet Nova. It was my Aunt Reen's car. I was cool to have this V8, and but if I lifted up the hood, I could look in there. I had 8 spark plugs. I had a distributor. I had an alternator. I had a fan belt. I had a water pump. I knew what it was, right? And if I had a problem, I could go and get the Chilton's auto manual and pull it down and fix something. And the young gals from high school, you may not know what a Chilton's manual is, but if you owned a car and did your own work, you didn't do it without Chilton's generally. And much of the really phenomenal progress we made under the Clean Water Act is kind of like the Chilton's manual. From an engineering standpoint, we could do these things. We knew how to do them. We knew how the money could be spent, what could be accomplished, and really enormous good things took place. But now in this day and age, not only in agriculture, but in many of our water quality issues, there is no more Chilton's manual for what we're trying to do. It's really hard. It is really hard. And if it's not hard technically, it's really hard economically. And if it's not hard economically, it's hard because of the influences of weather and variability and things that are beyond their control and dynamics that are unassociated with water, but societally speaking, just as important. So what I wanted to just talk about a little bit is coming at this as an Aggie, all right? And I do a lot of work with production agriculture across the country on these issues. And so I'm going to talk a little bit from that big picture and then try and bring it down into areas in which we maybe can drop the good guy and bad guy labels and make some real progress. So I don't think we can forget that the purpose of agriculture, what Rebecca was saying about how everyone has a stake in this. If you stop and think about, you laid all the parties out there, they're all right. But one of the things, farmers say this, it's a cliche. I hate cliches, but sometimes when they're true, it just kind of bugs you. But everybody is eating. Every one of us is eating. And the fact of the matter is that agriculture in this country feeds, depending on whose estimate you're talking about, anywhere from 500 million to 750 million people a year. So experts tell us that between now and the year 2050, we have to about double food production in order to feed a population that's going to go from about 6.5 billion today to about 9.5 billion, maybe 10, depending on whose estimate you use. It's going to happen. We talk about population control, we talk about it, and the population just keeps on going. Now the good news is that they say it will peak about there, because at the same time, as that population is growing, incomes are rising. Incomes are rising in China, in India, in Indonesia, in Brazil, and the next big frontier and all that will be Africa, and it will happen. And so, so we not only have more mouths to feed, but these are mouths that have more income, and most of them, live on a couple $100s a year, if that. And you start giving them middle-class incomes, and they're going to expect a middle-class diet, and it looks like a lot of the way that we eat here in the United States. We have to double food production, more or less. We need agriculture and our farmers to be really successful if we're going to do that with a minimum of conversion of habitat and natural landscapes to food production, if we're going to have any chance of it. You need farmers to be really modern and really efficient for most of that food. You just do. If you don't, it's going to mean the forested areas of the Rivanna River watershed have to go to cropland. It used to be that way, right? I imagine, much like the eastern seaboard, there were no trees here. We cut them all down to produce food and to build ships and houses. So it's a serious choice. It's not a zero-sum game, because I personally believe we can do this. We can do this. But it's a very, very real thing that you have to think about. And you couple that with the fact that crop production and subsequently livestock production associated with crop production for those that want to eat animal proteins, and that's going up all the time, is dependent on nitrogen and phosphorus. And the thing about nitrogen is that it's the foundation of all biological life for a very simple reason. It's really mobile. It's got the perfect chemical structure from which to build amino acids, from which to build proteins. It's the foundation for life. And it moves. It moves. And the fact of the matter is that you cannot mobilize enough nitrogen in the soil profile in order to achieve the kind of yields we want to achieve, in order to feed everybody without converting more natural landscape into agricultural production, without having that slippery molecule move around. It will move. It will move. And the question is, how do we manage that, and how do we control that, and how do we deal with that? But stopping it is not an option. Because when you mobilize it in the soil profile, all it takes is one ill-timed rain event, and it moves. All it takes is a region-wide drought, like we've had this year in the Corn Belt. And suddenly, all the nitrogen that they put down to produce crops, to raise corn in the 175 bushel per acre range, is now down around 120. And there's not a thing a farmer could do about that at that point in time to stop that. But we can help manage that. So some of the keys from my perspective to achieving success with agriculture. And these are not limitations. These, believe me, I'm not saying that these will keep us from being successful. But I think they require us to, they must be taken fully into account. So I started my career in Washington at the Office of Management and Budget. My job was to help manage the conservation programs at USDA. I was the conservation program budget manager. I did the CRP, the Conservation Reserve Program. I did all the programs at then the Soil Conservation Service, that's now the Natural Resources Conservation Service. I went to the Senate as on the Agriculture Committee. I was the conservation program professional in the US Senate. And so I was there when we saw the conservation financial assistance programs go from a couple $100 million a year up to now we're in the 1.4 to $2 billion range. So that's the career that Robbie and I have been part of in Washington, D.C. I can guarantee you those monies, if they are not being spent on things that ultimately make the farmers money, that when the federal cost share payments go away, there's always enormous pressure for those practices to stop. Because the farmer's got to put time and effort into it. And so the really ironic thing is that we have to try and focus those things on practices that make farmers money ultimately or save them money. And the irony is that for many of those things, if we played our cards right, we could get farmers to adopt them anyway. The financial assistance just helps, can accelerate the process. So these things have to be affordable. They really do. Particularly if you're going to want to have agriculture be able to increase its production to feed from today 500 million to 750 million people to well over 1 billion to 1.5 billion people. We have to have it. Farmers are like any of us. If we're going to make significant changes in our life to try and help solve a problem, it's really nice to see the change actually take place. I can't tell you how hard it is for the farmers in central upstate New York or central, northern Pennsylvania to think about what they're trying to do here to help correct a problem in the Deepwater Channel of Chesapeake Bay. I'm going to have to do what? Is their reaction? Because their water may not be impaired. And we, and all the talk that we have about, okay, well, these systems are interconnected, and they are. It's obvious. Everyone knows it. When Thomas Jefferson got his provision passed in the House of Burgesses here in 1765, I love that story. It's because he knew that his farm backed up on the Rivanna River, and he wanted to get his tobacco down to the ocean we know it's all connected. It was connected as a matter of commerce. It's connected as a matter of ecology. So, but still, for that farmer who is going to change the way they farm, put things at risk, because anytime you change the way we do stuff, how many of us really like to fundamentally change the way we do anything in our life? If I have to take a new route to work, I get pissed off, right? So, that's not to say that I don't change, but that's to say we have to find ways to take that kind of stuff into account. And so, for that farmer to do that work and not be able to see anything happen is just really hard. It's really hard. So it's important to try and link these to observable consequences to the farmers themselves. There's ways to do it. We can do it. But if we don't do it, we're always going to get a lot of resistance. Number 3 in this regard. This drives farmers crazy. So the goals of the Clean Water Act: fishable, swimmable, drinkable, protect the chemical, physical, and biological integrity of the nation's waters. I've heard Robbie's talk a lot of times. I know it. I know what the goal is. So, these are aspirational goals. Aspirational goals. We all aspire to a lot of things. It doesn't mean we can always achieve them, but they do give us guidance on where we're going to go. And the problem is when it comes to a lot of the issues we're dealing with, like nutrients, you cannot demonstrate in any kind of firm scientific matter the specific linkage of levels of nutrients with the levels of desired water quality. The science is still not there. EPA Science Advisory Board told them that when they're doing the numeric nutrient criteria in Florida. We're still struggling through this. It's not there. Nutrients are essential to the health of these waters. And at what point do they become unhealthy? We don't know what that point is. And so we have these aspirational goals. We know nutrients are a concern. We also know that they're essential. And I think it's fair to admit from a farmer's perspective. Well, let's give you an example. How many people feel like they know exactly where the medical community is today on issues of multivitamins? So I've never been a believer in them, but I've taken them sometime because my wife is here and she's a medical doctor, and I have an open mind, but we keep on finding out, well, that much vitamin E, no, that's bad for you, right? Or more, or even more seriously, hormone replacement, all those things. And I just saw a report today. Multivitamins are important for fighting cancer. It used to be, well, no, it could cause it. So it's confusing, right? I'm not saying this to be cute, really. I mean, it's really confusing. Do you know exactly what to do? Well, put yourself in the farmer's position that's trying to figure out what is the goal that I'm really going to be held to. You're asking me to make substantial changes to the way I farm. I can't really see what the outcome is going to be when I do this. And oh, by the way, I've seen over the last 10 years that you've changed the goals a couple of times. So why am I going to do this? It feels arbitrary and capricious to them. And these are serious people trying to do serious things, make a living, support their kids, send them to college, create an opportunity to retire. And for them, this is their life or death situation. And if they feel like we're being arbitrary and capricious in the way we change goals, they just tune us out. They do it to the people that work for them. I know from experience. And lastly, and it's all related. We, to the extent that we can, we have to be really practical in the things that we're asking for. When my dad's 91, going to be 92. Great guy, goes to the gym every day, still playing bridge. He comes to visit us, and down in the kitchen early in the morning, and say, "You want some coffee?" He says, "Yeah." And so I pull out, my burr grinder. I don't even have one of those, blade grinder. I have a burr grinder, and I bring out the beans. And sometimes I roast my own beans. But we pull out the beans, and he says, "Well, why do you got to do that?" And he says, "Well, the coffee maker's over there, right?" I mean, he was a Maxwell House guy. You opened up the lid, you took the scoop, you put it in, and, So he says, making coffee is complicated today. So he could learn. He got an iPad a couple weeks ago. He's still trying to figure out how to send us emails. He's going to figure it out, and he will be sending us emails. He can learn. But if it's not practical, he'll walk away. And if he had to make his living with, a pen and a piece of paper, and you gave him an iPad, says it'll get so much more efficient if you do it this way, and for weeks he can't actually even use the keyboard, let alone understand the software, it won't happen. It just won't happen. So that's an extreme example, but we have to make these things practical for farmers. So, making it work. So, we're in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. We're in a state where we have a lot of animal agriculture. You have a lot of meat bird production. It's not on the watershed. You have a fair amount of hogs. You have a lot of cattle, cow-calf operations, and even some significant feeding operations. This is one of the things that we worked on with Robbie, and where she showed enormous leadership in helping bring livestock agriculture to the table to get us to today's CAFO rule, the confined animal feeding operation rulemaking. And that rule will work. That rule will work. We're still just, it became final in 2003. It was subject to litigation in 2005. A new rulemaking took place, came out in 2008. More litigation took place. We had another decision a year or so ago, year and a half or so ago. We are now just getting into the implementation of that rule. Farmers raising livestock, operations of any size, are supposed to have containment for that manure. It's not supposed to come into contact with rain or the animals. It's not supposed to come into contact with stormwater. If it comes into contact with rain or stormwater, you're supposed to impound it. Better yet, just keep it out of the rain and out of the stormwater's way. And then when you land apply it according to a sound agronomic plan. Get maximum value of it. I know a lot of people, the ink's barely even dry in that, and they're saying there's no way it can work. Our farmers just aren't going to do it. And I don't believe that to be the case at all. And those provisions come directly out of the work that Robbie did with the livestock community, by the way. And they're outstanding. They were tough for farmers to accept that kind of oversight. And if they don't do it, they're subject to full force and weight of Clean Water Act civil and criminal penalties. $37,500 a day per day of discharge. So give them a chance. I believe those nutrient management planning requirements related to land application of manure have teeth. They will work. Use them. Farmers are going to grumble, but they're there, and a lot of farmers are ready to do them and are already doing them across the country. I believe the CAFO rule will work when it comes to the larger livestock operations. Smaller livestock operations can be a challenge. Under the federal rule, they don't automatically come under the jurisdictional requirements. They can under state law. Many states require dairies of 200-300 animals to come into this. They require smaller broiler operations to come in under this. I believe that's the case under the Virginia system and the broiler operations. And the provisions mirror, in terms of the nutrient management work, mirror what we have in the federal system. And so I personally believe they'll work. And if using our manure according to sound agronomic considerations, whether it's from nitrogen or phosphorus, if that's not enough, then we really need to come back together and address that, because we need that manure. That manure, farmers know how much it can do to add to the health and quality of the soil, and we need to be using that manure wisely. And if you're telling us that even that can't be supported in a watershed like the Rivanna River, we just need to come back together and figure it out, because that's a big problem. I'm not saying we can't figure it out, but try this first is my recommendation. With regard to the rest of agriculture, row crop agriculture, where we fall into the agricultural non-point source category. So we see three things predominantly that can be done that all fall into the affordable, practical, Chilton, auto manual kind of category. Number one, it's pretty sophisticated, but it's something that we call today 4R. It's advanced nutrient management. Making sure we use the nutrients, including manure, in the right amount, at the right time, in the right place, and in the right form. So knowing what's right in all four of those circumstances is the science and the art of this. Because weather, like I said, can thwart the best plans that farmers make. And when you mobilize nitrogen, some of it's going to be lost. It just is. But we use those 4 R's. And we need to expand the use of the 4 R's. Number two, we need to enhance the adoption of green infrastructure in row crop agriculture. We're talking about things like constructed wetlands as part of drainage districts, so maybe like an industrial stormwater utility, where you have constructed wetlands downstream, so that if we use 4 R's and try and minimize the amount of nitrogen and phosphorus and sediment that leaves the farm, that we are retaining that in stormwater treatment areas, treatment wetlands, or 2-stage ditches, or anything that can slow it up so that it can be engaged in denitrification and return into the atmosphere as N2 gas. They are shown to be successful, highly successful, ranging from places like North Carolina into the Corn Belt, and we're going to continue to push them and work on it. And in between those two, we think cover crops can be a really strong solution. And the challenge with cover crops, these are crops that you put down as the cash crop is actively growing or nearing the end of its cycle. You throw down winter rye, you throw down radish, you throw down a plant that will grow, get established, suck up the nitrogen, hold the soil in place to keep sediment and phosphorus loss from taking place, and then you cut it down, you burn it down with herbicides in the spring, and then you plant the cash crop. It can do wonders for helping to hold nutrients and sediment over the winter time, which can be a major pathway of loss. The trouble is, for farmers, is that if you don't get your cash crop in the spring, it's all for naught, right? And so if that cover crop, if it's a wet spring and I can't get in there and burn down that cover crop, or I have a 2-week window where I have to burn it down and try and get the field prepared and then the crop planted, and I miss that window because of weather, I will never do cover crops again, right? Because I've just told the banker I can't pay back my loan for this year. And that literally puts the farms at risk. So, and crop insurance won't pay, doesn't cover crop losses like that because of the risk that's associated with that. So we have our work cut out for us to make cover crops really practical and affordable. But done right, we believe they can save farmers or make farmers substantial sums of money, $10, $15, $20 an acre on net, in the Corn Belt at least, and done right. So there's those three things that we right now in agriculture down in DC, working with our producers out in the countryside, are really trying to advance. For our program, green infrastructure and cover crops. And in the case of the green infrastructure, seems to me that we might be able to talk with each other about looking at the revolving loan fund program and talk about using it for that kind of infrastructure as well as for our wastewater treatment infrastructure, if we really are serious about trying to get some of this done. Because it won't be on any farmer's property. It won't be a farmer's wetland. It'll be done by a drainage district, some kind of governmental authority downstream that's using this as part of the drainage water management, stormwater management, nutrient management program for the community. I think that's it. Thank you, Rob. Happy 40th birthday for spring weather.